Kisikukit, Kapiniskith. Welcome everyone to this evening's public webinar on the International Elk-Kootenai Watershed Study Board Interim Status Report, our public webinar. My name is Patrick Williston and I am a study manager on the study board, one of 6 study managers supporting the study board in this work. Just for everyone's awareness, this evening's presentation is going to be recorded, and we will be making it available to the public via a link on the Elk-Kootenai Study Board website sometime tomorrow. So if you have friends or colleagues who might be interested in the information presented this evening, you can direct them to the study board's website. We'll provide a link in this evening's presentation, and they can catch up on this presentation there via the recording. So thanks for that. I'm this evening's MC, and I'm going to help walk us through just the first couple of introductory slides, and then I'm going to pass it over to the study board co-chairs. So we will see if I can forward this. There we go. I'd like to acknowledge that the shared watersheds between Canada and the United States are home to the Indigenous nations that have relationships with these shared waters since time beyond memory, long before Canada and the US existed. And they are the original protectors and managers of these lands, the Amakas, and the waters. Woo-oo. This study board commits to working closely with the Ktunaxa Nation and its member tribes and First Nations and other Indigenous peoples. This evening, you will have an opportunity to present your questions regarding the interim status report. And the way we'd like to do that is with a question and answer function. As part of this webinar, you'll see a Q&A function button at the top of your screen. You can click on that and type in the question and press send. Don't forget to press send just below in the comment box. And that will submit your question to the study board, and the study board will have an opportunity, because we have many of the study board members with us this evening. They will be able to provide, you will hear from them directly. At the latter end of this evening's presentation, we'll get through the questions that folks have posted during the meeting. So at any time during the meeting, you can enter your question and press send, and it will be received by the study board. The main way of providing, we'll get to this in the presentation, but the main way of providing input for consideration of the study board to improve the interim status report that hopefully many of you have seen and read is by submitting comments to the email address that's at the bottom of this slide. That's elk@ijc.org. But we will revisit that and encourage you to submit your comments or questions to that website. I am going to walk through the agenda. So we have a bit of an agenda because what we'd like to do is provide kind of a synopsis of the report and then make time at the end of the presentation for addressing questions and comments that are raised by you. So you will get, I think, some introductions of the team, and then background. You'll get a description of the advisory groups that have been stood up and are supporting the work of the study board, the deliverables, the effort to engage the public on the work done to date. You'll get an update on the work of the technical working groups and the budget for this study, the timeline, a couple of issues that have been identified and brought to the attention of the Commission, and some forward looking at the next steps for this study. Finally, the last part of the evening, we will, as mentioned, if you've typed in some questions or comments, we will get to those right at the end. So that's how it's looking. And I think at this point, I would like to pass it over to the study board co-chairs, Tom Bansack and Oliver Brandis. And I will pass it to you too.
Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled that you're here tonight to learn more about the interim status report. My name is Tom Bansack, and I am the U.S. co-chair, and I am coming to you from the shores of Flathead Lake in northwest Montana.
And Kisukukit, my name is Oliver Brandis. Good day and greetings from the West Coast. I am coming to you from the mouth of the Colquitts in the Lekwungen-speaking People's Territory of the Esquimalt and Songhees here in Victoria, BC, and for that I am thankful. And we very much appreciate your time and willingness to engage. You can see our whole group here in the picture, many of whom will be on the call today, and you'll hear from a few as we go through some of the detail. Tom and I will kind of set the frame here a bit as Patrick has so nicely set the scene for us. I'm going to start maybe with the next slide, where we'll talk a little bit about the reference and the directive. I'll take the first few slides and then we'll pass it back to Tom, and then we'll get into some of the details. So many of you are familiar, many names do look familiar, but just to give us a little bit of context, we have the reference and directive that we work under. So in March 2024, the governments of Canada and the United States, in partnership with the Ktunaxa Nation, sent a reference to the International Joint Commission. This reference asked the IJC to establish a study board to convene experts and knowledge holders to do a few things. The key items are the conduct transparent and coordinated transboundary data, information, and knowledge sharing, share, synthesize, analyze data and information to support a common understanding of pollution within the watershed and its impact on people and species, and to produce a final report and recommendations, which will be due in September 2026. And of course, today we're here to talk to you about the interim report. So we're at that, approaching that halfway mark. And in addition, in September 2024, so going back a year now, the IJC provided the directive. So this was really the guidance document. That's our playbook to this study board that was formed at that time. So if we go to the next slide, this will look familiar to many of you, but this here is our study area. This, of course, is the Kootenai River to its confluence with the Columbia River, the Elk Subbasin, the Koocanusa Reservoir, and Kootenai Lake. This is where we focus our work. As you can see here, of course, and I'll just remind that the Kootenai Basin covers parts of southeastern British Columbia, northwestern Montana, and northern Idaho. The headwaters start in Canada and BC and flow across the international border and into the United States, into Montana, then traveling west, returning north back into Canada, again into Kootenai Lake until it meets the confluence of the Columbia River, all of which are part of the Ktunaxa territory, and that the watershed reference is the first reference to the IJC that the two federal governments have developed in partnership with First Nations and the Indigenous group, with signatories from Canada, the United States, and the Transboundary Ktunaxa Nation. This is particularly important because of the geography and the history of the watershed. So this kind of sets the geographic terms of what we're doing. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see the structure and how we have organized ourselves to do this work as part of the larger International Joint Commission, which you can see up top. And of course, we get the support of the International Joint Commission team. And we, the study board, which you can see in the middle here, is indicated by a couple of really important pieces. We're supported by the study management team, and you met Patrick, who's one of a team there that have really supported us. And the study management team also has helps us, amongst many things, coordinate with a couple of our advisory groups. And so if you look at the far left, you'll see the three main advisory groups, and many of you on this call are part of those. They are the Public Advisory Group, the Industry Advisory Group, and the Council of Government Advisory Group. And of course, we are also supported by a really critical group called the Council of Indigenous Knowledge Holders, and in particular, the Council of Ktunaxa and Kasanka Knowledge Holders. And you can see that this indication, which we've captured through these circles, the dotted circles, to really show that iterative nature of how we're trying to weave that different knowledge systems together to help us do our work. And the study management team, as I've indicated, also helps support a key piece of the work done so far, which we'll get into in a bit more detail, but that, of course, is the technical working groups, and you can see the 4 components there. And again, those circles indicating there's an iterative nature, there's an ongoing learning and integrating kind of component to that work. So this is just a sort of snapshot of the overview of how we're structured and how we do our work. I think it's really important to understand how these pieces work together to kind of create the work that we're trying to do, which is a sophisticated look at the Kootenai watershed. So if we look at the next slide, you can see the various elements that have supported our work. I've talked about the study management team and the International Joint Commission a little bit as well. And one of the big pieces that we're going to spend some time talking about today is the technical working group, and how this relates to the work that we're doing, and how the study management team really provides that critical oversight on behalf of the study board. It helps link the work of the technical working groups with each other. It ensures that those doing some of that technical work have the support needed to succeed. And of course, we as the study board and together with the study management team are always tracking progress. And of course, we also have a commitment around data management and to ensure the data used by the technical working groups are available and preserved for later use, and that we're using all the right protocols. Next slide. And I mentioned already a little bit about the Council of Indigenous Knowledge Holders, and in particular, the Council of Ktunaxa and Kasanka Knowledge Holders, to which we already owe a great deal of thanks. I know I can speak on behalf of the whole study board, and certainly my co-chair Tom and I have benefited from many opportunities to engage in conversations and relationship building and trust building as we understand the sophistication of the different knowledge systems working together. Again, as I've indicated, this reference was developed in partnership with the Transboundary Ktunaxa Nation, and that's a really critical dimension of the work that we're doing. And we see there's a couple of really core concepts like IEKWSB that helps us understand the different worldviews, and this is a concept that encapsulates the Ktunaxa belief in all living things and expresses the interrelatedness of culture, language, and knowledge, and how we can weave that in or fold it into the work that we are doing. And of course, the council plays many roles, but in particular to ensure that Ktunaxa oversight, voice, and principal values are represented through consistent and iterative engagement with the study board. And again, we're very thankful for that, and we're appreciative of the learning and the opportunities to bring these multiple perspectives together to build a sophisticated product that we hope we will be able to deliver. So the next slide. So these are the deliverables, really 3 pretty simple ones. You guys will have seen, many of you, the plan of study, which we delivered a number of months ago. And of course, today we're talking about the specifics of the interim report, which really is to show progress to date, to show you the structure, to give you that snapshot of the work we've done to date, how we're going about the work, and to really set us up for the heavy push ahead. And we'll get into a bit more detail about the final report, which is the final of the deliverables. Next slide. Of course, as part of the plan of study, we delivered in March. We had a number of opportunities and ways of incorporating public comment, and that is captured in the document as well, including some of the issues around timeline and the way we've structured ourselves. You can see the breakdown of those public comments that we received in that time frame there. and that gives you a sense of how we're interacting and engaging and learning from those people who are impacted and those who are on the ground and have the real insights. Next slide. Again, we've talked a bit about those advisory and review groups. Again, I just repeat here that that plays a critical role. These are the networks where we get our information, both input in and input out, help us spread the word as we do our work. And then there's a complementing piece called the Independent Review Group for the IJC, and they will provide the IJC an objective review of the work of the study board. The two chairs, one from each country, and now we're talking about the independent review group, and has other experts assist with the review as needed. So that's a bit more arm's length. Next slide. I think at this point, I'm going to be passing it off to my colleague and friend, Tom, to bring you through some of our activities to date, and we'll be back to talk about some of the details as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Oliver. So I'm going to continue to talk about some of the engagement that we, the study board and study management team, have done. And some of us live in or near the watershed, but some of us don't. And so therefore, one of the first things that we needed to do as a board and team was to engage the land and the water and the place, as well as the people that live there. And so we've done a lot of traveling since this project began, but we've done 3 on-the-ground, in-person meetings and tours, and they're just organized geographically. We did one trip to the Canadian headwaters of the Kootenai and Elk Valley in British Columbia. We also did a trip in Montana, where we met Kootenai Reservoir and the Kootenai River in Montana. And then our most recent trip in August was in the lower Kootenai River in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, adjacent Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and then in British Columbia as the river flows back across the border towards Kootenai Lake. And many of us felt it was really important and valuable for us to be on the ground and learn more about the place firsthand before we could do a good job with this study. And that also included meeting with local communities in those places. Next slide, please. And central to that was meeting the Ktunaxa communities that live on the land and water in the Kootenai watershed. And thus far, we have engaged 5 of the 6 Ktunaxa communities. We've engaged the 4 in Canada and the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho. And we have not yet, but we plan to engage the Kasanka Band of the Kootenai Nation in Montana. Part of our engagement with the Ktunaxa was learning from them and listening to them and their knowledge of place. And we had a Ktunaxa language lesson, so we could start to engage with the land in the Ktunaxa language. And then we were very fortunate in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, to have the Ktunaxa creation story shared with us. And it was very impactful. We've been on the river. We've been to Sturgeon and Burbot hatchery. We've been to the headwaters of the Columbia and the Kootenai rivers, all with Indigenous guides, essentially, who are willing to share with us their place and their knowledge of place. Next slide, please. Our engagement with the communities on the land in the watershed have been public meetings. We've had public meetings in Fernie, British Columbia, and Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and also a virtual listening session. And I think this is our 3rd webinar where we've been sharing with interested members of the watershed and beyond what we've been up to, the progress we've made, and give an opportunity to hear from the people who are concerned about the health of the waters and land. And then we've got a communications committee and a great communications team that have generated press releases. We have a website. We have printed materials that we've been bringing to public meetings, but can also be found on the website. We've got a brochure with frequently asked questions, postcards, posters. We have put out one newsletter. Our goal is to put out a couple newsletters a year. Again, just keeping people abreast of the study progress and what we've been doing. And then public comment is essential to the success of this study. And so when we have a public comment period, we process the input and the questions and comments, and then we've been putting those out as what we call a what we heard document, where we're summarizing the comments that we received. One what we heard document already came out for the plan of study, and we're working on another one from the 3 listening sessions that we did, 2 in person and 1 online. Next, please. So the real workhorses and heroes of this study are the technical working groups. And the study board in the plan of study, we identified 4 areas where we wanted to gather experts from different agencies, academia, the Ktunaxa Nation, both sides of the border, to look into these 4 categories that we identified as central to the study. And the first is water quality status and trends. The second one is impacts to human health and well-being. Third is impacts to ecosystems, including cumulative effects. And the fourth one is mitigation. They're not in order of importance. That's just the way they shook out. And these technical working groups, their goal is to assist the board in carrying out the work required in the study, investigating the impacts of pollution on human and ecosystem health. These technical working group members, they were chosen and appointed by the study board, and the International Joint Commission sets them up with contracts. And the goal is to reflect the diversity of membership so that all the different dimensions of the directive can be addressed. These technical working groups have all prepared draft work plans that they're describing their approach and the tasks that they need to complete to fulfill the mission, and how much funding they might need, what their timelines are, what the products that they expect to come out will be. And the board and the study management team, we're working with them iteratively. We are communicating with them. We've reviewed drafts. They are still a work in progress so that those work plans can be the best possible plans. And the interim status report provides summaries of the work plans at this moment in time, but they will evolve a little bit more before they're finalized. That being said, the technical working groups have already embarked on the information gathering and the first steps, such as compiling literature and data, even though the ultimate plans will change a little bit. And ultimately, these technical working groups are identifying the cross-cutting issues and themes that are relevant to more than one of the technical working groups. And I should say that they communicate with each other. And there's a lot of information sharing and conversations that happen behind the scenes to make sure that any of these groups, technical working groups, aren't working in isolation, and they're not working without the help of the study management team or the guidance of the study board and the Council of Ktunaxa and Kasanka knowledge holders. Next slide, please. So we have some summaries of the kind of the main objectives of each technical working group. As I mentioned, there are more detailed summaries of the work plans in the interim status report. But I'm going to turn over the water quality status and trends slide here to one of our study board members, Jill, who is working very closely with this technical working group. So, Jill.
Thanks, Tom. I'm Jill Frankfurter. As Tom mentioned, I'm another member of the study board. I sit just outside of Helena, Montana. And my background is with the U.S. Geological Survey and working primarily with water quality data and data review. So it's been great working with this group, and the technical specialists that are on that technical working group were amazing. As we go through all of the technical working groups, we'll talk about their primary objectives. Because for the sake of time, we won't be able to go into a lot of detail on it. And as Tom had mentioned, these work plans are still a work in progress. So we're still working with the groups to get everything finalized. The water quality status and trends group has already identified their 3 primary objectives that they're going to be working on as we move forward in the next year. Primary objective 1 is going to be just to identify all the data sources. There's a tremendous amount of water quality data in this watershed. And so they've got to identify all of the relevant peer-reviewed science, industry, and government reports for the Elk-Kootenai watershed as are related to water quality and the pollutants. And then objective 2 is to identify and describe then those pollutants. And it's a very broad, the reference is very broad, so they're looking at this very broadly. So they're looking for the occurrence of basin-wide pollutants that persist beyond an isolated or a localized area within the waters of the Elk and Kootenai rivers, and then Kootenai Reservoir and the Kootenai Lake. And then the third objective, and probably one of their, it's going to be it's time-consuming objective, definitely. So there's a lot of work built into this objective 3, and it's identifying the relationships between the hydrologic and then the water quality data. And that includes looking at gaps in the data, and then recommending screening processes, statistically describing the data, and then reporting on what pollutants are in the study area, and then what uncertainty there is associated with the data. And then making some recommendations on coordinating the collection and analysis of data that will be collected in the future to fill these gaps, the gaps that they've identified through the study. Some of their specific activities are going to be, as Tom mentioned, a really structured literature review to look at all of, there's been so much work in the basin already to pull all of that together. And then to do data wrangling or manipulation of that data, and then hopefully have some time for analysis. One of the big things for all the technical working groups is going to be the incorporation of Indigenous knowledge. And so that's something that the water quality group is working on, as well as the other technical working groups. And then, what ultimately the goal is to really describe the current status of water quality in the basin, and then hopefully get to doing some analysis on sources and trends in those water quality pollutants. So with that, I will kick it off to the next group, which is the ecosystems group, I believe. Oh, impacts to health and human health and well-being. So Kelly, you're up next.
Keesa. I'm Kelly McKittrick. I'm a Canadian Study Board member, and each of the twigs has both SMT members and study board members assigned to work with them, and I'm one of the study board members working on the human health and well-being twig. We're really pleased with the level of expertise that we've been able to get in our technical working groups, and objectives of the human health and well-being is to identify known or suspected human health hazards from currently identified pollutants in the study area, and to expand the analysis to include any additional pollutants and constituents of concern identified by the water quality status and trends twigs. A really important component of the study is interaction between the twigs and looking at ways for them to collaboratively build off of each other. A second objective to assemble and review existing risk assessments and well-being studies and synthesize to report an assessment of risk using current information, and to report on health and well-being, including threats to health based on both Western and cultural science. One of the data gaps this group's already struggling a little bit with is the incorporation of well-being, which is really important to the Indigenous perspectives, and trying to work out defining what's been done in that area, and also the gaps and how to approach those studies related to well-being. Objective 3 is identifying high priority data gaps in health related information needed to fully meet objectives 1 and 2 based on uncertainty analyses, and to provide recommendations on approaches to gather information to fill these gaps. And I'll turn it on to the next twig, which is the ecosystems and cumulative effects.
Thank you, Kelly. So as an ecologist, this twig is very interesting to me, but also massive, right? The impacts to all ecosystems, including cumulative effects within the Kootenai watershed. So quite a large task that has been handed to those twig members. And they've taken what I think is an interesting approach, which is kind of a geographic and ecological one, where The headwaters have certain conditions and certain ecological characteristics. Kootenai Reservoir has another one. The lower river in Idaho and British Columbia has another suite of characteristics. And then you've got Kootenai Lake. And so their breakdown is somewhat geographic and ecosystem differences in ecosystems. And their main objectives are to modify a draft conceptual model we provided to help them identify the pollutants and linkages that needed study, and to identify the terrestrial and aquatic features that are affected or potentially affected by identified water pollutants and stressors in the study area. And identified water pollutants, that would be information coming from the water quality twig. So just talking about kind of the cross-pollination of the different technical working groups. The second objective is to report out on the knowledge, status, and data for each component related to water pollution. And then the third objective is identifying high priority data gaps in ecosystem impact analyses that would need to be filled to meet those objectives and to look forward towards prioritized studies in the future that could address some of those gaps. So quick summary of a gargantuan task being undertaken by our ecosystem technical working group. Next slide, and back to Oliver.
So yes, in addition to the job of co-chairing this wonderful group, I am also connected to the mitigation working group. And you can see here quite a bit of detail of the various objectives. And as we've stated and committed to having these technical working groups work together, learning from each other, synthesizing, integrating, connecting, the mitigation one in particular will be having to work off of all the other pieces. And one of the challenges, of course, is all this is happening simultaneously. So there's lots of work to be done, and you can see the objectives here, assembling and reviewing the data, and really to take a look at the known sources and how they've influenced or impacted and the shift that the trends in water pollution are underway. So this is a really critical part of it. The foundational work is to compile an overview based on these existing sources of current water pollution with the cross-border effect for which mitigation is being applied within the watershed. Lots of sources of information, of course, from state, federal, provincial, indigenous, corporate entities, and of course, literature searches and the critical existing knowledge and indigenous knowledge in the regions. A lot of work to be done around assessing that information, determining the key activities and pollutants of potential concern with those cross-border effects, and really some of the detailed work in the to be done will consist of developing a focused source mitigation specific conceptual model. So again, extending this larger conceptual model to see how this works together, so to refine the work plan objectives and develop the focused mitigation model for pollutants and stressors. Develop the shared knowledge base, that literature searches, the information, knowing what we know, developing the synthesis products, right? Preparing the sub-reports on those major themes. This will be the critical work of the mitigation piece as we think about how we're responding and how we're dealing with what are the known pollutants on the landscape. So next slide, I think we'll go back to Tom.
Money. So to do all of this work requires funding, and this budget was proposed in our plan of study. You can see the breakdowns for the different components that require largely personnel, travel, and materials. And the governments have committed to funding the study. Not all the money's in hand yet, but we've been told by the IJC that we should expect the requested $4.9 million to be here to fund the study and fuel the activities that need to take place for this study to proceed and be successful. Next slide, please. Timeline. So we are working on a tight timeline. A typical IJC reference would be 5 years, and we have 2 for the study board to be working on. And then there was some time in advance of the study board being set up between March 2024 and September 2024. And then our final product, the final report, is September 2026. And then there's some time after our report comes out for different entities to review and process the final report. So where we are with the STAR there in September 2025 is we have put out our interim status report for public comment and review and input from the independent review group. And then we will be processing any public comment that's been received, hopefully by folks like yourselves who are at this webinar and have been tracking this process. And we will incorporate feedback into the final version of the interim status report. And then we will let the twigs do their work and let them dive deep into available data. And then those technical working groups will be providing us with their reports that we will review in advance of preparing the final report. So that is the general timeline. From a study board perspective, we're about halfway through. But like I said, there's some time at the tail end for other entities to go over and process our products. Next slide, please. So, what we're all here for today is to learn about the interim status report. And so we were able to release it close to close to the date that we anticipated. So it came out publicly on August 27th. We heard from the plan of study that people wanted a longer comment period, so we increased our comment period from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And so comments can be received until midnight on September 14th. We do request that you're specific about our comments. It's hard for us to address large, broad concepts. This is feedback on this particular report. So if you're providing comments, mention the page and the paragraph and the section so that we know specifically what you're addressing so that we can process your feedback. And then there's an email address. That first QR code can take you to the landing page and with more information about how to provide comments. And then that second QR code can actually get you the full report in its current draft state. So if you need information about the process for submitting comments or the report itself, you can get it from those QR codes. Next slide, please. So in the directive provided to us by the Commission for this interim report, they specifically requested us to communicate to them issues and challenges that we are facing on this study. And so there's a section in the interim report that this summarizes, but many of these issues were brought up during the comment period for the plan of study, some of them brought to us by you. And the first issue or challenge we're facing is this is a very broad assignment. All the water pollution within the entire Kootenai watershed is a significant task. And so this large study area with very different ecosystems and environments, collecting data from a large environment, from a large study area with different environments is challenging in itself, but to then assess and synthesize the data and the state of the knowledge it's a challenge. It is a large task we've been handed. The effects of water pollution on water quality, ecosystem health, human health, and well-being in a large study area, they are complex. And so again, this is a large task we've been handed, and ultimately synthesizing the available data and technical information is a challenge. And some of the technical working groups are drowning in data. Some of the technical working groups are finding data and knowledge hard to find. And so we have this variability in the amount of knowledge depending on the technical working group or the discipline or the area of investigation that we're working in. So there's asymmetry, and there's challenges with too much data, there's challenges with too little data, but our heroes in the technical working groups are rising to the challenge. So that broad assignment that we received through the reference and directive, that's an issue that we're communicating with the commission about. Second one is the short timeline. To do more faster than in a typical reference is a challenge. And it's a challenge for multiple reasons. One, we are committed to engaging the communities and the ecosystems and the Ktunaxa Nation, First Nations, tribes, and communities. And building relationships takes time, and doing that right takes time. Well, we don't have a lot of time, and so we're doing the best we can in the short timeline that we've been given. And also, and those of you on this webinar can relate to this short time frame limits the amount of public engagement. Public comment periods are shorter. The amount of time that you have to process our products when they come out is shorter. And then it also limits the amount of time that we have as a study board, study management team to build meaningful and respectful relationships with the Ktunaxa and Kasanka and to incorporate that knowledge. And kind of a nuance of the short timeline is that, normally we'd be doing a number of these tasks in sequence. For example, the water quality twig would be set up first, and they'd be bringing together water quality and pollution data that they would then be able to hand off to other technical working groups. But due to the short timeline, things that would normally be done in sequence have to be done concurrently at the same time. And so just fostering communication amongst all the players all the time is the way we're trying to do that. We don't have the time to do task one, task two, task three, task four in those orders. We are basically working on tasks 1 through 4 all at the same time. So those are the issues that we've articulated in the interim status report. And like I said, a lot of that is drawn from public comment that we received, that we've received from you folks and other interested members of the public and the watershed over time. Next slide, and I think I'm handing this back to Oliver.
Yeah, we're on the home stretch here. Don't become alarmed. We're going to have lots of time for further conversation. You can see in the picture here, quite a coincidence. These are the 4 study board members you've met tonight, but we put that picture in well in advance of thinking through tonight. And I get the benefit of telling you a little bit about what we're doing now, where we're looking forward, right? I think you have a snapshot of the challenge ahead and the work to date, but the real intensive action, we all joke, we keep thinking we're going to get a break, but I think the intensive period of meetings, work plan implementation, data compilation, synthesis, and outreach is ahead of us now. So we might even have to crank it up even a little higher. A couple of important considerations for us always is the unprecedented nature of this study, which requires, as Tom has suggested, as all the speakers have suggested, this critical ongoing engagement, this really deep relationship and trust building through the Council of Ktunaxa and Kasanka knowledge holders, but also the broader groups like advisory groups and the public. That's been a really critical part of how we want to do our work. We will continue, the board will regularly meet with and guide the technical working groups. We have a firm handle on what needs to be done and how it should be done, and we're going to keep supporting that work. They will conduct their work on those key objectives, and we will play a part throughout, providing that oversight, that direction, that ongoing learning, and ensuring that it's synergizing and connecting with all the other groups, other technical working groups working. So we build a big team with a lot of expertise and a lot of insights. And then finally, we'll roll up our sleeves and really get down to it. The board will consider all that work that's been put in, all the information we've gathered, and we're going to develop those recommendations for the International Joint Commission. We're going to propose additional study needed to fill the data gaps and deepen understanding, and we're going to produce a draft final report, which we'll also make available for public comment in advance of our September 2026 date. And again, a big part of the challenge, I think Tom has laid it out really well for everybody, is the sheer size and volume and the complexity. And so some of our work may be simply identifying the really critical questions that we're going to have to delve in further. We're going to answer as much as we can, and we're going to try and be as clear as we can about what we do know and where there is consensus or convergence, and where the information or the understanding is not converging. But we're going to, in some cases, simply have to identify where the gap is and what additional work needs to happen. So this is what's on tap for our team going forward. And if we go to the last slide, you'll see that we have a bit of time now to engage in some of that conversation and get some initial reactions from you around the work we've done to date, and maybe some of the other pieces we should be emphasizing. And you can see here that you have the website, you have the QR code, you have lots of opportunities and different ways to submit your comments and questions. Always available is that website, elk@ijc.org. But in particular, now we need input on this interim report. So maybe with that, I'm going to hand it back to our erstwhile MC, who will guide us through the questions and comments, and will engage in a broader discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver and Tom. Thank you for stepping us through the interim status report and providing that overview. I do also note there's a little note in parentheses at the bottom of this slide, a reminder to those folks who are on advisory groups, just a request, if you are willing to use a spreadsheet that was shared with you to provide and submit a comment. It's a nice to have. It's not, if you don't feel comfortable using that type of approach and you want to have a free form submission to the email address, that is also welcome. But it can facilitate our work by using the form that was provided a day or two yesterday, I think, just recently. Okay, so I think what we have planned now, we've reached the question and answer portion of the program this evening. And so I'm going to see if, give me a second, it's going to take me a second here. So we have been gathering questions submitted this evening through and you're welcome now to use that Q&A function. And we have a couple of questions that have arrived, and maybe I will, I'll read out the question, and we'll see if we can encourage someone from the study board to jump in and provide a response. So the first question we've got here is regarding the timeline and the next steps, and that is looking for confirmation after this current review period on the interim status report. The next opportunity to review would be the next opportunity for public review would be the final report. And do we have an understanding for when that is? So we have some answers prepared, or an answer prepared.
Yeah, maybe I'll just jump in to confirm that indeed we have the three main deliverables. We're now in the middle deliverable, the interim report, and indeed the work then will happen, and we will have a final opportunity for review based on us bringing all the work together, which will be the draft final report. So there will be a window, and it isn't determined yet, although I stand to be corrected, but we're going to allow a healthy amount of time for some review and public comment so that we can do our work for our closing date, which will be to present the final report in September 2026.
So given that the final report is due, I believe it's at the end of 2026, and there's going to be some time needed to integrate comments received, one can imagine that the public review period might land sometime toward the end of summer. I don't think the dates are confirmed at this point, but I think that's what it might look like. All right.
And maybe I just
think-
want to add the point though that through our various advisory groups that will be ongoing engagement and updates. So there are through that mechanism some ongoing relationship, and so we're not just going to hide away. We're going to keep engaging, and we're going to also be spending additional time in the watershed itself in different parts.
Thanks, Oliver. We have a question about whether the draft final report will include the study board's recommendations for the IJC.
Yeah, maybe I'll just quickly answer, yes, absolutely. That's a critical part of our work, is to bring together all the knowledge and to identify the recommendations and the insights that the study board will have. Again, we emphasize we're independent, and so we will pass that to the IJC, who will then pass that forward. Our job is to understand, do the analysis, and come to collective recommendations and priorities.
Thanks, Oliver. I see, David, you got your hand up. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to type your question into the Q&A part, and then we'll jump right to it once we've got that. There is a comment here just about the lack of results in the interim status report. Does anybody want to?
I can jump in.
Sure.
The technical working groups that are doing the technical work have just been assembled and have just started working. So they're gathering information right now. And so they're not at a point where they've reviewed and synthesized the information. So there really aren't any results to share yet. So we have to do things in order, and bringing together available information and identifying gaps in information is the first step. So we have a little bit of a time lag before they'll be able to actually do work that would have presentable results.
Okay, we're just going to stand by and see if anyone else.
One quick comment,
Yeah.
maybe why we're getting lower than anticipated questions. I've gotten a little poke here saying that some folks are encountering problems putting in questions in the Q&A, and that might be why the hand is up. And so I don't know how we want to troubleshoot that, but that's what I've heard.
And David gave a thumbs up, so I'm guessing that Q&A typing isn't working for him. So should we do hands one at a time and allow people to verbally comment? Seeing if I have the power. So David, I believe I just empowered your mic and you could unmute and state your question.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
This is likely a question for Jill on water quality. I just want to know how you are defining a basin-wide pollutant as opposed to one that's localized. Like, for example, would a pollutant that is found at low or moderate levels across the whole study area get prioritized over one that is found at high levels, but only in a few like smaller HUCs or hydrologic units? Or similarly, does a pollutant have to be present in a certain percentage of the study area or a certain number of those smaller HUCs? Like, yeah, what's going to define basin-wide?
Okay, and I'll probably have some of the other study board members help me out as well, but there will be an assessment of pollutants throughout the basin. So they're going to look at areas where they've got, what pollutants they have concerns with based on exceedances of thresholds. or standards or any kind of criteria. And so they'll identify those where they've really, because of time and because of the scope of the project, initially they're really going to focus on some of the pollutants that have a transboundary nature. So they're really, given the focus of the reference, on as it goes from one area, say the Elk-Kootenai into Kootenai, as it's going across the border. They'll focus on those issues initially. There is kind of hope that we're going to be able to look at those and then actually have some time to go back in and look at kind of sources and trends and travel. So it's going to be probably a little more narrow than just because of the timing of the study. And I'll throw it open to anybody else from the study board that wants to articulate that better than I did.
Yeah, and maybe I'll also just jump in here and just remind if folks are having if the Q&A function is not working seamlessly, as it appears to not be, you are still very much encouraged to submit your comments and questions to elk@ijc.org, and the study board will be receiving all of those comments and questions. Did anybody want to add to Jill's response, or there are a couple more questions here?
I'll add to Jill's response, just related to the issues for the commissioners I brought up. Having a gigantic study area in a short period of time will limit the depth we'll be able to go into every pollutant everywhere. And the reality is, when the twigs start gathering information, that they're going to have to prioritize their time and efforts. And the more widespread pollutants and the ones that cross the boundary, the international boundary, will likely be the ones that they focus more on.
And then, if you just kind of follow up on the last, as Tom was mentioning that, and then, as they go into their objective 3, which is where they're going to start to identify gaps and recommendations, if there's items that they can't get to because of timing, those would be things that would be identified in objective 3 as recommendations for what needs to continue into a next phase of work.
There's a question here about the overlap with the modernization of the Columbia River Treaty and the operation of the reservoir or river regulation in the influence interrelation on pollutants and ecology. Will the study be examining this interplay?
Well, maybe I'll take a stab here. I mean, our job as an independent study board is to look at everything that's relevant to the work. So yes, we will of course pay attention to these developments, but we are absolutely separate from and have nothing to do with the Columbia River Treaty modernization process. And so the knowledge and data and information, and I guess maybe it's a reminder to everybody listening here, if there's data or knowledge or information that we need to know about, or any kind of science, you need to help us out by bringing it to our attention. And so we've been doing that. That's been a big part of the work. So again, I think the coordination is not the right word. That's not what we're doing. We're paying attention to all the issues, including those that relate to developments there, as we would with all the other information that we're trying to ensure that we have gathered and that we're ensuring we're going to assess and recognize. And again, as others have said, the study area is so vast and the context is so complex. In some cases, all we will be able to do is come up with hopefully the really good question of what needs to be done next.
And I would add that our reference and the Columbia River Treaty negotiations are separate processes. And changing regulation of the watershed and the reservoir is a major topic. There are subsets of that that are directly related to the water pollution that we have been tasked to look into. And so I see, if there are kind of Venn diagrams, there'd be some overlap of the two things, but they're not overlaid on top of each other. There are different processes with different foci, and ours is water pollution exclusively. So that's what we're focusing on.
There's a note here, someone just looking for confirmation that the next review period is just shy of a year from now. And I think that is an apt description of the next opportunity for a draft document to be available for the public to review and provide comments on.
Maybe I'll just add, that the challenges with we have to set up the study. We had to set up the sort of plan of study. That's why we spent so much time making sure that we were going to set ourselves up to do the work well. We've been spending a lot of time familiarizing ourselves with the issue by meeting with and engaging with folks right in and the Tanaha specifically. And so, yeah, it's a year. I think that's what is needed to do the work, and that's what's so critical. This work needs to be done so that there's something comprehensive and useful to comment on, and that's what's ahead of us, as I noted in the next steps kind of piece. That's the hard work of doing the analysis and understanding the issues so that we can put it together in a comprehensive way, not in a partial way. That's really an important piece so that the commentary can see the full picture that we understand it to be.
Great. Well, we've got Noel Durham with their hand up. So let's see if we can figure this out. I don't know. There's a way to we're just trying to sort this out. Give us 1 second while we figure out the logistics here.
Noel, will you try to unmute? I believe we've activated your mic and you might be able to turn it on now. Or not? Isn't technology grand?
And
Well,
again, I think the
go
backup
ahead.
will be to send the question or comment to the email that Patrick indicated, elk@ijc dot, and I don't remember what the dot is.
ORG.
ORG.
Not com. Yeah. elk@ijc.org. We've made our way through our list here of submitted comments. Just want to recognize, thank you for typing your comments in here. I apologize, Noel, that we have not been successful in activating that. Well, I may pass it over here to Oliver and Tom.
So maybe our final task then is to thank everybody for taking the time, for listening, for engaging. We encourage you, if you have further reflections, any comments or questions, to put that certainly into the website. Patrick, I'm seeing a question just popping up, so I know you're trying to hand it off, but not quite, I guess.
Oh, okay. Excellent. There's a question about pollutants in Kootenai, including selenium. It's talking about, let's see if I can get the whole question right. And the potential role of a water diversion from the Columbia River Treaty on canal flats that may drastically change the concentration of the pollutants. So it's looking at, I think it's a provision under the Columbia River Treaty that may allow for a diversion of water at canal flats and how that may influence concentrations of pollutants in the reservoir.
Our technical working groups are compiling existing data from existing studies to report on conditions now and in the past leading up to now. And so that alone is a significant handful. So tackling on speculative future things is not going to rise to the top. Yes, it is a major concern and a concern that could happen down the road, but we need to get a handle on conditions now. That's what we've been charged with.
I think that would be a really great question to submit to the email address, and we'll make sure that that is brought to the attention of our study board and technical working groups. We recognize that that's a key concern that has been raised. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would, just kind of adding on a little bit to that and to Tom's comments, that is, I think, a primary focus of Objective 3 is going to, identifying gaps and then making recommendations going forward, and then trying to connect the, the hydrology and the hydrology to water quality data. And that may be something they can identify going forward, that there needs to be future work done. But they really are going to have a challenge trying to focus on just even getting to sources and trends for the existing data, as Tom mentioned, in this round.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shall we rewind back to the fond farewells, the thanks, certainly to all our team here, Patrick, who always does such a good job of keeping us in line and keeping the conversation going. Certainly my co-chair Tom, who I so appreciate working with, and the whole study board and the study management team and all the IJC team that work together so seamlessly. And of course, to all of you who've tuned in tonight, tried to ask your questions. Hopefully we have addressed at least some of them, and any further you will put onto that email that Patrick's outlined a couple of times. So from my perspective, I'm very thankful for all the effort and the ability to keep doing this work. I really appreciate being part of this unbelievable process, and continue to work hard on behalf of the watershed, which is my primary goal.
Yeah, and I want to thank everyone that attended tonight. You could be doing other things that might be more fun than this, and the fact that you're putting your time into this process is really valuable to us. In a way, it validates the process when we're hearing from you and are hearing your feedback and incorporating it. And want to reiterate something Oliver said, but our team is collectively working really hard on this, and you can just know that from study board to study management team to IJC support team to the technical working groups. We're taking this seriously and putting our time in and doing our best with the task we've been given.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Oliver. And thanks all for joining us. That brings to close this evening's public webinar and the Elk-Kootenai Watershed Interim Status Report. And look forward to hearing from you through your submissions to the email. Good night, everyone. Tachas.